Right now we are located at the warehouse of our partner, Raihno company, which is a logistical company that after the start of the war shifted to humanitarian support of people in all the regions of Ukraine that were affected by the war.
These people that volunteering here, it's just people all around the Lviv, and some of them are from another countries and cities. We need to select all different kind of wood. In this side, it's they select clothes, and this side it can be hygienic. In my department work only doctors. We work with unknown for us medicines.
We have a volunteer center at Uku. We receive humanitarian aid from different countries of Europe and also from the local people in Lviv and the region. They process it and then they distribute it among the different people who are in need.
Our main focus right now is to gather stuff abroad and also produce some specific categories on local factories and send them back directly to the front lines, to the soldiers and also citizens who got damaged because of the war.
We have a lot of different spheres, and every student can do something for our victory.
During these days, students of the Ukrainian Catholic University have been supporting the information department in creating different formats of content to fight with the fake information from the Russian community.
We are very grateful to those who contributed to the establishment of this shelter and help us to provide good living conditions for people in difficult life circumstances who are forced to leave their homes.
At the very beginning of the crisis, we needed clothes, and we are thankful to the donors that in a very timely manner we received all these clothes we needed. Right now, this is not a category in need. There are huge stacks of clothes right now that is not being distributed because there is no need in the war zone.
And it's interesting to find out that what supplies for the front, as well as safety equipment for those health workers who are working with children and hospitals as well. Unfortunately, as you know, even people doing humanitarian aid are being shot at. And so we have to provide safety equipment for those going into those.
Ми маємо довести, що ми живемо далі, ми продовжуємо рухатися і здійснювати ті плани і цілі, які ми собі поставили. І незважаючи на вторгнення, і незважаючи на наші жертви, ми сильні і ми віримо, що ми переможемо, тож ми працюємо в даному випадку на освіту. І ми продовжуємо завдяки вам, завдяки нашим друзям і благодійникам.
Сьогодні цілий вечір ми будемо провадити нашу зустріч. Мене звати Андрій Курочка, я є керівником відділу розвитку Українського католицького університету і маю велику честь бути ведучим сьогоднішнього вечора. А ця честь подвоюється, потроюється і помножується, оскільки я маю сьогодні неймовірну чарівну співведучу Ірму Вітовську, акторку театру і кіно, неймовірну людину, неймовірну жінку, переможницю різних нагород, лауреата різних премій. Та врешті-решт, як Ірма казала, Вікіпедія вам в поміч.
Дякуємо дуже. Насправді я дуже не люблю бути ведучою і завжди заручник від таких папірців, щоб не помилитися. То ви мені даруйте, коли я буду уточнювати точні якісь напрямки, але так я буду вільно з вами просто спілкуватися. Це може бути необмежений час, тому пана Андрія буду просити наступати мені на ногу або так трішечки наближатись до мене, щоб я розуміла, що треба закругляти вже історію і співбесіду з вами. Отже, як я сказала, справді це сьогодні важко, взагалі будь-які зустрічі. Я як людина творча, і яка ми так само працюємо на зустрічі, на те, щоб презентувати ті роботи, які мали прийти до глядача, це надзвичайно жорстко для нас. Тим більше втратити можливість великої території України це робити. Але я переконана, що тільки так ми можемо перемогти. Морально, стійко і сильно. Поки наші хлопці і дівчата роблять те, що ми з вами не робимо, ми складаємо їм тил і робимо те, що ми формуємо нову генерацію. Я вважаю, для цього ми тут і зібралися. Нова генерація, яка має підхопити країну і довершити ті справи, і виправдати, і віддячити тим жертвам, які ми кладемо сьогодні.
Звичайно, ця війна перевернула життя багато кого з нас. Ми всі змушені бути воїнами. Воїнами кожен на своєму фронті, кожен на тій ділянці, яку він зайняв в своєму житті, і бути ефективними для того, щоб наблизити нашу перемогу і для того, щоб забезпечити наше щасливе майбутнє завтра. Ми сьогодні зібралися для того, щоб бути разом, щоб подискутувати, поспілкуватися, послухати і почути один одного, просто постояти поруч. Це для нас сьогодні, як ніколи, дуже важливо. Дуже важливо, щоб поруч з нами, по той бік екрану, більше
absolutely marvelous than we have over 150 people, maybe even whole families watching us online, and we are extremely grateful to our online audience. And just to remind you that we've gathered today not only just to hear some good stories and good thoughts, but to support the cause of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And for that purpose, there's a QR code in the bottom of the screen. And if you'll scan that, you'll be able to offer financial donations in support of the Ukrainian Catholic University, its cause, its goals, as well as its mission. And surely the new generation, it takes an example from those professors, from those leaders that are working at the Ukrainian Catholic University. And I'd like to pass the floor now to the Dean of the Ukrainian Catholic University, the Professor Dr. Bogdan Prach. So please, Professor. So greetings, everyone. We are from Ukraine, and we are in Ukraine, we're from Ukraine. So Your Excellencies, Your Excellency Ambassador, dear friends, friends to Ukrainian Catholic University, all those here with us in the audience, in this room, as well as those listening to us online. The Ukrainian Catholic University is just as many other universities and many other institutions is facing those horrible events in Ukraine. But on the other hand, every time we want to be at the front, and as you've already felt this, we want to have this just a bit of humor in order to be able to survive this, to overcome this, to do everything possible in order to become warriors at all the front lines. The greatest success of ours over the previous time is that we've managed to have an offline educational process so that the students were with us. And under current conditions, this is truly an exceptional case, an exceptional possibility, but we clearly understand that both the parents and the students are expecting to have the real education, and the education is real only when we are all together. And we have a clear mission, that is to be together, to educate, to teach our students to love one another and to give hope to one another. So today we have our wonderful speakers, professors, and they will have a very good discussion for all of us. We have a lot of questions. In fact, we have more questions to those in control of our country, for those helping or assisting us. And everyone is facing these thoughts. Why do we receive some information too late? Why do we receive some weapons too late? Why do we have so small amounts of these or that weapons? And there's so many questions why. And hopefully there will be more answers than the questions. So with God's help, let us have a wonderful and fruitful discussion, and let us all start our program. So, greetings. Well, the dean had to introduce me, but let me do that myself. So, good afternoon. We kept saying that it's good evening, but it's still a day. My name is Sofia Opatska. I'm the Deputy Dean of the Ukrainian Catholic University. I'm the founder of the business school at the Ukrainian Catholic University, and I have an honor to moderate this discussion.
Everyone who needs a translation into English received headphones. So if you did not, please raise your hand and we will do it.
So hopefully everyone has received these possibilities for translation. If not, please do so. Just to remind you, anyone needs an interpretation into English, please say so. So it's an honor for me to introduce the panelists, and today we'll be talking about the keys to transformation. Let me introduce the panelists, and you please support them, because they're also kind of a bit worried. So let me first introduce Yaroslav Hrycak, a professor, a PhD in history, a public person. So everyone please take your seats, and I'll take my seat as well. So now please welcome Miroslav Marinovich. He's responsible for the mission of the Ukrainian Catholic University, so please pick the seats. And just wanted to say that Miroslav is not only the Deputy Dean on the mission, which is a fairly kind of a unique position, but he's also a Ukrainian lawyer, founder of Ukrainian Housing Group, political, also dissident. I don't know if you've been proud of that, but you have to be. Well, a former political prisoner, in fact. So I knew that I will say something wrong, and hopefully it happened sooner than the later, so I can talk normally later on. So let me introduce Katerina Zahory, the co-founder of the Zahory Foundation, our senator and Ukrainian media expert, and the patron, and also Roman Kachur, a psychiatrist, a president of Ukrainian Federation of Psychologists and Psychiatrists, and then also head of the department at the Ukrainian Catholic University. So please, Roman, please join us and take your seats. Okay, hopefully you've remembered who's who, and I'd like to congratulate not only those of our audience members who've gathered here today. So thank you for coming offline, but it also words of greetings to those joining us online. It's great to have solidarity among the people from the whole world, because whenever we get a message or a letter, either on the messenger or on the SMS message, like, how are you? Can we help in some ways? And of course, we've appreciated all those messages, so big greetings to all of us and all the audience online. Andrei Kurochka has already mentioned how can you support us online, and I'll remind you later on. So let's have our conversation in the following way. I will start the debate. I can't call you really guests, because, you're all sort of good friends of us. We're all the same. We're all so close. Just hopefully it wasn't the case that somebody can't hear you, because sometimes you start talking and people say, well, we haven't heard you. So going back to what I've tried to say, we'll have the following conversation. I will start our conversation, this sort of debate, and then we'll have some questions from the audience. And there could be provocative questions, painful questions, maybe some questions with home, but we don't want to have some extraordinary questions, and we want to discuss about those most painful issues that we face. So we need to search for hope. We need to search for the hope of the future, as we all need this hope. So let's start with this introductory question that I keep hearing from my friends, relatives, those I know, those I don't know, partners from abroad. They keep asking me, okay, what would the victory mean for Ukrainians? What is your understanding of the victory? Because we try to make this victory closer, but what is the meaning of this victory for you, for those people close to you? Why not starting with this question? So, Professor Hrycak, you have a first chance to answer this question. Now, what is the victory for me? Well, minimum is to have our forces at the borders of 1991 and this liberation of all the territories. But this is the minimum, because this is the absolute necessity. But it's not enough, because if we'll get to the borders, or in fact, when we'll get to the borders of 1991, then the West could say, okay, you did a good job, nobody expected, but you've done this, you're heroes. But then let us start conversations with Moscow and without you. So that's a conditional, it's a possible situation, but we cannot avoid, we cannot exclude this. Why am I afraid? Because then we have a scenario of 1991, because Russia is left alone, and hopefully it will change, it will be a wealthy country, but then in the end there will be a new Putin. That's not a new scenario, but that's a scenario that we had for the Russia over the past 100 years. Because Russia had some periods of good reforms, this intention to become a normal European country. Alexander I, Alexander II, 7 months of temporary council. Even this reforms of Gorbachev, Yeltsin. The problem is that after this short period of normalization, there's another bloody stage of repressions, which ends up in a military aggression. So if that mechanism will not be stopped, that if we'll get to the borders of 1991, then of course we cannot preclude, and this is, I'm saying as a historian, that this war will be continued by our grandsons or sons.
Because Russia would never change. That's why, for me, the key condition is the radical change of Russia. Let me point your attention to the fact that 2 weeks ago there was Vsevolod Nevezemtsev's article in New Europe newspaper, and he speaks straightforward. Russia would never change itself. Forget about this. It's too late. Russia would only change when you deprive it of sovereignty, not only the external attack, but dictating it what needs to be done, involving the European Union and NATO. The sovereignty should be taken away from it, especially the control of the red button, so that the gangsters would not be deciding the future of the world. Demilitarization becomes one of the aspects. Now, what is the involvement of Ukraine here? Mr. Hrycak, we will get to that topic, and I have some follow-up questions already, but first I would like to share the floor with the other keynote speakers so that everyone would speak about what war means to you. So, Miroslav, back to you. Can you hear me? Okay. To a certain extent, we have already achieved a very important element of the victory, namely, we believe in our victory already. Socializing and networking here, I talked to His Excellency Apostle Nunci, and he said that he hasn't met a single person in Ukraine who wouldn't believe in our victory. And this is a very important element of our joint future. The second element is this. I support what Yaroslav just mentioned. It's not enough for me to return to the national borders circa 1991, because if we return to them as we were before this war, then that would be our defeat, actually. We need to change, and as the foundation for such changes, as a model of such changes, I would probably quote Saint Tertullian, the blood of those who hurt is the seed of the future. In other words, the blood of today's martyrs of this war would be the seeds of the future Ukraine, the country that would be responsible for its fate and will join the family of international community and would become an important element of it. Thank you. Katya, what does victory mean to you? And I know that you talk a lot recently with simple people, ordinary people at the occupied territories. Probably you know what the victory means to them as well. Well, then these would be two opposite answers. For me, the victory, and everyone whom I mention it to argues with me. For me, the victory means reparations. That means that all the countries around us persecuted Russia for what Russia did. Reparations, not only returning back within the national borders and stopping military actions, but that Russia has been persecuted and that it's being forced to start paying reparations. And I want it to happen in our lifetime, because under all the other scenarios, my kid grew up, and when they ask me why my 12-year-old boy is so militarized and knows about weapons better than some of the adults, because I say most of his life he spent in the time of war, so that nothing like that would happen to him, to my grandchildren, to others. Russia has to be persecuted. If you have any other way of suggesting how we would understand that Russia was persecuted, well, suggest it to me then. People I talk to, and I love talking, and the fact that I'm a keynote speaker on the intellectual discussion with the keyword intellectual speaks for itself. So speaking to the people who the occupied villages and frontline villages have the same mood. Some had lots of Russians in them, others had Russian troops passing through them. So people there talk only about ceasefire and tomorrow. That tomorrow we know that what needs to be done. We wait for tomorrow to come, and that we will have this tomorrow. Tomorrow will be New Year. Tomorrow our kids will go to school. So this feeling of tomorrow, not only of today, which is over, well, for me, this tomorrow is reparations. Thank you. And now, Mr. Roman, what victory means to you and to people you talk to? Hello, colleagues. I would probably have a more modest assumption of victory, because my expectation of the victory is that Ukraine will join the Western world. I believe demanding from the world or from the history that we would completely defeat Russia, well, I don't know. I cannot make such a statement myself. I believe our victory and our tomorrow would emerge when the safety and security would come. And this safety and security would only emerge in the world that is based on the ethics and that is safe, that is well protected. The world that is based on the rules. And only then, I believe, the needed precondition for our development would arise. The development is possible when the security is ensured, and the security and safety would happen only if we join the structures of the Western world. I don't know which borders we would have. I cannot expect anything like that, but what we need to recognize is that the war has started. We are in the time of war. There is certain wartime ethics, but the war will end at some point of time. We will end this war, and I believe this war will end when we join the Western world and when the eastern borders of Ukraine would become eastern borders of the Western world. Then our victory would come. Thank you. You probably all also thought to yourselves what victory means to you, because this is the question that requires an answer. Our discussion here is named Keys to the Transformations. The Metropolitan Sheptetsky said that the key to transforming Ukraine is inside it. It's tough for us to change the external circumstances, but it's within our will to change ourselves. And this quote from Metropolitan Sheptetsky is quite straightforward, but this task of changing yourself and through transforming yourself help to transform the country, well, it's actually more complicated than it sounds. So we have this feeling of changes, but there are diverse opinions on many things in abundance as well. And my follow-up question to you would be this. We have already started talking about this. Which changes you observe in the society? Which changes bring the victory closer, and which changes take the victory away from us? And depending on our mood, we want to see more of one set of changes and less of the other. So what sort of changes do you see? So Mr. Miroslav, let's start with you now. Thank you. What I can observe now is how Ukraine transforms its historical fatums into historical chances, and this pleases me a lot. Let me illustrate it with 3 examples. The first example, the regional differences. Our lifelong fatum. We failed to apply the formula of unity, which could be understood as homogeneity, unification, sameness. You know, Edita Piecha song, Become What I Want You to Be. We have been singing it along this song and tried to demand that others will change to please us. But it's no longer truth. Our Maidans have created unity in diversity, and it's quite natural for us now. This is what made what pleased me at Maidan's times, and in the time of war, it's something that cancels all our previous fatums. The second issue might be quite unexpected to some of you, but our historical fatum was Ottoman rule. That's what Metropolitan Andrei Sheptetsky was talking about. Inability to stay within the vertical structure, or unwillingness to stay there. But we are willing to make our own decisions at the managerial level, but at lower tier there. So look at how the armed forces of Ukraine operate right now. It's delegating the decision-making to the lower tiers, and it works. Now, it's called NATO model. It provides flexibility to the system. What used to be our fatum turned to our great victory. The armed forces of Ukraine feel quite well under such model, and Russia cannot understand this because it's not natural to them. And what we're lacking completely, and because this is not only the responsibility of Ukraine, but the responsibility of the whole world, we are observing how autocracies, and Russia is ahead of the herd here, they want to open the new history of being superior, offering violence as the only tool to resolve all the outstanding problems. And for Russia, this is quite natural, using violence as the main tool of governance, governing the state, and as they propose to govern the whole world. So for Ukraine, the main idea used to be the idea of fairness, not violence, but fairness. And let's stick to this. This is our nature. And I'm convinced that not the autocracies, but the fairness and love are the future of this world. Thank you. Mr. Miroslav, you always surprised me how, with your background, you can still remember about love and demonstrate that love and talk about this love candidly and openly. If it's okay with you, one more comment from me. I visited Prague recently, where they celebrated their own revolution, and the motto of Prague Revolution, Velvet Revolution, was truth and love, and it's beautiful. That's speaks to us, to our nature. That's what will help us to win. I look at Professor Gritsak, and I can see that he disagrees with you. He wants to talk about Russia, how to change Russia. Wait a second. I promise I would not talk about Russia. No, you can, because it's of no interest to us. Well, no. We just touched that. Please allow me to answer your question. Unlike Miroslav, and probably there is a semantic difference, and I don't believe in the fact that the key to transforming, that we are able to transform ourselves. I'm a Christian, and it's tough to play the role of the devil's advocate in the Catholic University. Well, you quoted Metropolitan Sheptytsky, but let me tell you, as a historian, why I don't believe in this. Because the key to changes are institutions. First and foremost, institutions. Those who go to church, those who pray before commune ceremony. Well, the institutions could be found in good or in bad institutions. I don't believe that the institutions are only bad. The problem of Russia is that they cannot resolve the issue of governance for 500 years. But my idea is this. I believe that Ukraine came very close to resolve all our existential problems. By default, I believe that Ukraine is already in the Western world, but almost there. Almost doesn't count because it's not enough. In order to be fully there, we need to carry out 3 reforms. The first reform is to create independent courts. The judicial reform, this is qua non. Without this, nothing would happen, full stop. However kind we are, if we don't have independent courts of law, well, you are from business. I know also, like you know, what it would lead to. Second thing, the level of development of each society depends on the status of 2 professional occupations, medical doctor and teachers. As to the hospitals, we seem to have a success story, and of course, medical experts should speak here, but I'm not even talking about the army here because it's understood by default. But the second precondition is the reform of educational system, and I'm candid here. I don't believe that the Ministry of Education could reform itself when the minister is the person who has been caught in plagiarism, and he wouldn't be the student of our university. Well, he would not even finish the first semester. Yeah, and he cannot handle the reforms. And here I agree with Miroslav. Like I said, we should have non-state universities, fully autonomous, like independent courts and autonomous universities that have a space of freedom. This is important, and to expect that the ministry will handle it, well, not the ministry that we have now. Why UKU is great? Why the Kyiv-Mogila Academy is great? Because the impact of the government is small. Kaha Benukidze said that if you don't want to have apples in your country, create the Ministry of Apple Trees. So let the universities rule those transformations. And my idea is quite simple, and I have changed it when talking to a journalist. Oh, she's here. Because before talking to her, I dreamt of opening Catholic University in Odessa. Such universities as UKU and Kyiv Могила academies should be in each metropolitan city, Lviv, Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, Dnipro. As to Donetsk, well, let's not talk about it right now. So I dreamt that the Catholic University would be opened in Odessa, but now I changed my mind. The Ukrainian Catholic University in Sebastopol. Wow, that's quite a relevant topic to applaud to, but I still wanted to ask you about Russia. Can I do that, please? Yeah. My question is this, because I am concerned with this issue, and being moderator, I have the right to ask my questions. And what I'm concerned about is that another Russia would not be of interest to the Western world. Yes and no, because people are afraid of it. I believe in the time of war, radical changes have happened, and I can illustrate it with the example of Russia. When they claim that Russia would not survive for 3 hours, but now Scholz almost tells the same thing as Scholz is saying, too late, but still it's happened. The problem of Russia is that it cannot reform itself, and it's Ukraine that should reform Russia as a winner in this war for two simple reasons. Because the West, in particular Biden and the US, at least that's what I was told, Biden didn't believe that Ukraine will give up, but he believed that the government will give up and would not function, but Ukraine will keep fighting, and then the job of the US would be to help this guerrilla warfare for a long time to topple that empire. So Ukraine's role was the piece of cheese in the mousetrap, and Ukraine demonstrated what we can deliver, even not being that strong. So first thing, Ukraine's voice should be heard in those negotiations with Russia, and we need to clearly say what are the contours of our victory. We earned that. And second thing I believe is that after this war, everybody would understand that Ukrainians are the best experts on Russia. Only Ukraine knows what Ukraine can do. So I'm not interested what will happen with Russia, but what I'm interested in, what we're going to do after the victory. And we need to start describing and discussing this and properly articulate the contours of our victory. And it's probably already too late, but we need to do this because the victory is coming. We don't know when, but every day brings us closer to the victory.
Well, thank you, Katya. What about your viewpoints on the changes in these areas where you work for? I mean, the changes which are bringing us closer to the victory. Well, this is just these changes that we've already mentioned, these institutions that are not working. Because, well, in Kiev, I thought that they're working, these institutions are working, some institutions working better, some not. But now, facing all those challenges that we all have in the deoccupied villages, this is particularly the case because not a single institution is working. So using this opportunity to call to governors, deputy governors, different ministries, sometimes I face better people who, well, and then they offer some support and assistance, but the institutions cannot support. In some cases, the hospitals are not working. The doctors may be doing something, may be trying to help travel around the country and offer the assistance. There are people offering some local support. And what I was impressed is this love to one another and the feeling of self-support, because there's no community, the community is not working like a village council, but then there is this feeling of mutual support, and this is something we've shared, this impressions with one another. So whenever there is a church in a village, and it doesn't matter which church, it just stays there, or there is a cultural house, or something similar to that. It could be, you know, a cafe or something, or a small restaurant where people were gathering when there is no communications, no electricity, no gas supply, no water supply. But people were gathering in this area and helping one another. So we have to recognize that those institutions are not working. We need to reform them and then to select an area in which we do have an expertise. So and start working on this area, on changing this area. So judicial reform is something that is very crucial. We have a lot of lawyers and barristers, international recognized barristers. So we have a lot of them sitting in this room. So why don't you rise and start dealing with that? So let us all join and cover those loopholes, those gaps that are all over there. Because without institutions, we will be able to help on these several people, but not to be able to transform into an effective and efficient state. A state with Ukrainian language is widely spoken, particularly in the southern villages, when you can understand that it's hard for the people to speak Ukrainian, but still they're trying, they're intending to do so. So we need to do something more than we had to. Those who know how to earn money, surely you have the expertise, you have the knowledges. So let us just spend this, let us use this expertise whenever we have a spare time for the better of all Ukrainians. So a number of things that I would like to compliment. When the full-scale aggression started, and in fact there wasn't too many institutions who got trusted in somewhere outside of Ukraine. Unfortunately, Ukraine Catholic University is an institution that is well trusted around the world. So we have a lot of projects, but we don't have enough institutions. So I absolutely agree that we have to develop those institutions and to cover those loopholes, those gaps in the roof. Well, that's a temporary solution, but we need to think maybe we need to remodel that roof. Maybe we need to reconstruct the roof completely. And this is something that we keep hearing from our Western counterparts. They keep saying that you have to plan on the strategy, you have to think not only about the fast response, because you're fantastic in what you've achieved over 9 months, but you have to start thinking about something that will give an effect in 2 or 3 years. Maybe not tomorrow, but on the long-term perspective. So, Roman, we are all traumatized, and everyone, has its own trauma. So what to do with that? How do we come closer to the victory with all these traumas that we've sustained? So how do we target all this positive energy in the right direction? And what about the collective diagnosis? That would be too much, I believe. You know? Everyone can do something. In order to do some jobs, you don't need to be a sane person. So everyone has some traumas, and the whole civilization is built on certain traumas. And just a couple of words about the institutions. I agree with this quote that a key the root cause of the problem is all about the institutions, but I have a different viewpoint on why can't we establish institutions in that way. We've talked about institutions for 30 years. I was a young man when we started talking, and we keep saying about these institutions, keep debating about them. But why do we still speak about institutions? Because nobody can change by himself or herself. And we could change in a subjective environment. We could change by having cooperations or relations. We build the establishments or institutions based on the Western examples. But until now, until the beginning of this war, the Western world did not sort of host us or welcome us. They've set high standards, but they were not giving us a roadmap. And recently, the Ukrainian authorities said, okay, we need to change, but how about we make a list of, I don't know, 7 steps that we need to make. But that was never done because the Western world was afraid of Russia, so they were not leaving us behind, but at the same time they were not inviting us to join themselves. And now we have this unique opportunity. We're not alone. This is a window of opportunities that would exist for some time, and if we will not use it, we will lose it. So for Ukrainians, it's important to realize that that it's all about the time. If we'll not use these resources, then we'll be left on our own with our problems. So my first statement is you can't build an institution without being sort of inside the Western discourse. If you take a look at our neighbors, Poland has completed building institutions, I think 7 or 8 years after becoming a member of the EU. Romania is still doing that. Bulgaria is still doing that. Croatia is still building its institutions. That is why I think that we have setting for ourselves a very ambitious task, but we need to identify whether it's valid, it's reachable or not. I mean, a child cannot educate itself. There has to be some sort of relations. There has some sort of a connection. So in cooperation with these Western partners, we have to establish our institutions and procedures and traditions, and that takes time. And that also takes a security environment. We have to be inside of a security environment. We've had 3 revolutions, and each and every of them was victorious. And we are the winners of 3 revolutions, and we are facing the situation because our elite was too weak, and we couldn't join the Western world. Maybe our weight is not enough, because we have this chance to went out of this vicious circle, but that chance is a brief one. So maybe it's months or even less, and it will not understand our trajectory where we need to go if we'll not start setting the real objectives. Then we will lose. And how do we transform as the society? Do we need to transform? Or maybe we already got what we want to have. Well, as soon as I start thinking that it's all good, then in fact it's not. Because I have to be dissatisfied with the way I transformed, and I believe that after the end of this war, we will have a very significant challenge, because we are now in the center of the world. People are talking about us. People want to cooperate with us. After the victory, we'll be just an ordinary state, semi-destroyed by this war, and we will have to start, teaching, to start learning how to write letter A, because having a victory in this war doesn't mean that we'll know how to build an independent court. So we'll have to remain or to become victorious, but still we'll need to learn more and more. Well, don't hold on your microphone, please hold it. You've mentioned the 3 revolutions, and there are people here who were on the spot during those revolutions, and many of the people we have in this room participated in the Orange Revolution or the Revolution of Dignity. But you say that we pray all the time long. Now, what's that we still need in order to get this final victory? Now, what do we need to do to get this victory? Now, I'm not going to talk about this foreign enemy, but let's talk about ourselves. You've already started talking about this, but maybe you can elaborate. Look, I'm more of a psychoanalyst, so I know what has happened, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's not a question to me. So it's like an English lane. You need to cut the grass for 100 years, and then after 100 years you have an English lane. So we need to correct those values. We need to build the institutions, do not step out from these principles, to be sort of uncomfortable to hold our own grounds, to continue doing that for maybe additional 100 years, and maybe we'll get somewhere close to Harvard. Well, if someone is feeling uncomfortable, then it's all good. So I have a question to all of you, to all the panelists, just to remind you that after this question, I'm ready to give the microphone to our audience. So let's get this question to our panelists first. We need to keep the President, MOD, General Staff, CNSDU, and then say goodbye to all the others. To build all the institutions and agencies in you. Maybe you can add anyone that about whom I forgot. And where we need to have this need, we'll need to establish, we need to build even more. Because the people tend to ask about the president, they tend to ask on when do we have ATB, that's the supermarket, when do we have Nova Pošta, when do we have railroads. Not sure whether railroads can operate without the ministry, but I think yes. Well, this pharmaceutical company, Darnica, it can operate without the ministry. You want to issue licenses, okay, you do so, but still do not interfere, and every person would have a chance to get its own medicines or drugs. So not a single agency, public agency, helps in that. So let us just identify what we need, where do we need this. If we won't be satisfied with our results, we'll crush it and start anew. And this lane, it wasn't perfect on the second day. It has become perfect after 100 years of development. So, Professor Grysak, what prevents us from winning? Let me correct my statements. Not the Ukrainian Catholic University in Sebastopol, that's not going to be appreciated, but all the people. But maybe a Crimean Tatar and Ukrainian university, or Crimean University in Sebastopol, but their own university in Lviv, and just as ours university in Sebastopol. So that's going to be our dream. And I think this sort of conversation we could have back in 2001. I'm not talking about 1991, because we've already passed a long way that we are not just capable of writing letter A, but solving a highly complex mathematical tasks. It's not about pride, but this recognition of the fact, because we wouldn't have such volunteers, we wouldn't have the soldiers as we have it, because Ukraine has become more mature, has become more developed, and I believe that Ukraine is even better than Europe. And it's not me who's saying that. Many people are saying that, because Ukraine is something that many Europeans were dreaming of. So we need to remember this. Just like a Murphy Law, everything that goes, it goes to the worth. If you think that it changes for the best, it's not. Because there's this double in history, and the double can never create anything. So this devil will spoil our victory, just as in case of the Orange Revolution. So we have to have this anti-double security system. And I believe that many institutions are already functioning. I don't know which institutions should we add, because I'm really afraid of this president, because he's good now, but what's going to happen after this war? If he's got a lot of authority, and he's got a lot of possibilities of running totalitarianism. It could be like different types of totalitarianism, but this is not going to go to do us any better. So we have this institution, and we have to identify which institutions are working, which are not. So there's one more aspect. Very important for Ukrainian Catholic University and for others. We are developing very good, we're developing fast, but there's a moment when we turn this quality into the resiliency. Because for Oxford or for Harvard, the key term is 50 years. Only after 50 years that you can say that whether something is being achieved or not. We're on the middle of this path, but we're going in the right direction, so to say. So let me tell you where we do have the gaps. After the first revolution, after the second revolution, we were lacking the political project or a political party, a party of the motivated young people who would have a political will and the knowledge to radically change the rules in this country within a short period of time. So this is the rules in history and economic. What the Balcerowicz did in Poland, it's not an exclusion, it's a rule. Because the tactics of a turtle that you need to be, slow but confident, that's stagnation. For countries like Ukraine, we can only jump into this development. So we need to have a leapfrog tactics, meaning we jump into the development. But we never had things like that, because every time we had a president who said, we'll do that, but he never did that till the very end. So there are people who fight, there are people who support fighting, and maybe after the victory, we'll need to have the same division, those going for politics and those helping them, because we need to have a high-quality political project who will not say that he will find Zelensky or prevent him from spoiling. So I think it's all about creating a high-quality political project, 1, 2, 3, or many, to create a counterbalance. There would be one or two, several parties that would be kind of competing against one another. And I had an interview with Sergei Filimonov. He was a famous person who fought against the construction projects in Kiev, who's now on the front lines, and he said that the army is fighting marvelous, and Russia has no chance on the front line. But what's happening? There are some negative things happening that we don't want to discuss right now. There's toxic money on the front line. Some politicians are trying to help certain military units in return for, they would participate in their political projects. And some money are not clean, are criminal, and they might be trying to build their own personal armies. Because the more we understand the level of threat, and we have a high level of threat, the better will we be able to regulate. Only those who will truly fear, only they will become, popular and effective.
Thank you. Miroslav, what prevents us from becoming victorious? Well, first of all, what I would like to start off is that our defeats or retreats, whatever you call them, that's part of the schooling process. Yeah, the powerful parts of it, more powerful than victories. Yeah, in my life, I learned more from my losses and my mistakes rather than my victories. At some point of time, we would be able to evaluate the value of those so-called defeats, which were the God's way to teach us, actually. The second thing is that the river in front of us could not be leaped over in one jump. You need to jump from one stone onto another. And another image, Maidan revolutions were steps for us, but we need to learn how to move in a straight line, on a flat surface. You cannot govern the country using Maidans. Maidans are to help us avoid the erroneous path. But we need to learn this calm and civilized way to develop and evolve. What prevents us from achieving this is what we mentioned, lack of institutions or actually a slow pace of establishing such institutions. And as a result, for us, this results in excessive personalization of the authorities and the erroneous functioning of social lefts, because the excessive personalization is an excessive attention to the needs and preferences of the leader, and everybody is focusing on that. while this erroneous functioning of the social lifts, for me, means that they select personnel based on his or her loyalty to the manager, not based on merit or talents or, if you will, integrity. That's why this social lifts practice works slowly and erroneously. But there is another important consideration in the Ukrainian Catholic University. We need to mention this, and in order to explain it better to you, let me illustrate it with a metaphor. One episode from this history of the Soviet Union back in the 1970s, when the Soviet Union has opened towards trading with the West and started procuring industrial production lines to start manufacturing various industrial products. But the West told us, it's not enough for you to buy this production line. You also need to buy the materials that meet relevant standards. And our experts responded, oh, no, we can handle that ourselves, just sell us the production line. But then, using wrong materials, the technological lines broke, and these are money wasted right there. Now, the image that I promised, how to better understand the reasons for our lack of success. We are procuring at the West the institutions. We tried everything and invented everything, starting from Verkhovna Rada. We have all the needed ministries in place. We have all the institutions out there. But why they are not working properly? Because of the wrong materials. Just pay attention to human material. Everything I'm telling you was very relevant before the war. People in Ukraine, often enough, knowing about the values, would set them aside, because what they were mostly interested in are vested interests. So if the values stand in the way of vested interests, push them aside. But the war has changed things quite radically, and I can see this with the students I teach. They are ready to listen about values. They are ready to talk about the values. They nod in affirming that values are important to them, and we can change the situation. I believe in this, that we can finally start using the material, the proper material, to allow the technological lines to work properly. I believe into this. Thank you. Well, we can start with the questions from the audience by raise of hands, please. Okay. Let's start with 3 questions, but please mention whom you're addressing your questions to. Wait for the mic. And while you're getting ready, I would like to remind our participants online that you can join us by supporting the university. On your screens you can see a QR code, and using it you can donate to us either through our US Foundation or the Canadian Foundation, or via our website, in English version in euros, the Ukrainian version in hryvnias. Let's not forget why we are here today, to support the Ukrainian Catholic University. So, the first question, with the mic, because our friends in online would not be able to hear this question. The whole world is with us today. We're not on our own. Good evening. I'm Anton Shulik. Thank you for this very informative discussion. It's a pleasure being with you here today. I could not find the place in the first 3 or 5 months of war. I couldn't feel myself comfortable. Then I moved from private business to work in a state institution. That's my friend, not in Kiev. And then he got enrolled into the armed forces. And I asked him, what's the role of the business? Of course, we earn money to donate some more than others, some fewer than others. And he said, look, lots of social problems have emerged. And if you think that the people who work in those institutions would be able to resolve those problems, unfortunately, no. This is the person who joined the institutions from business. So what's your question? My question is this. How do you see the broader role of the entrepreneurs? Do they need to become social entrepreneurs resolving social issues, or whom are you addressing this question to? To Miroslav Marinovich? Okay, Mr. Miroslav, this is your question. Now pass the mic for the second question. Like I said, 3 questions and then we respond to them. Good afternoon, everyone. Igor Pavlyshevsky. My question is to all of the esteemed speakers, and it is this. Have you thought about the fact that the successful experience of the Catholic University could be scaled up, involving other universities in Ukraine? Which keys for transformations should we select here? Or are you only thinking in terms of developing your own university? I can only hope that not. Okay, and our third question from the front row, Vitaly Koval. And then we'll have our answers. I am the governor of Rivne Oblast, the institution that Katerina has just cancelled, along with the parliament. Yeah. So my general reflection and the question to those who are shaping the policy of the Ukrainian Catholic University. You talked a lot today about the institutions. Well, previously we talked as much about the values. As the alumni of your university, I would like to disagree. You're saying that the institutions are not working, but we remember growing people, growing companies, right? Institutions are all about people. Does the institution, the armed forces, function before the February the 24th? All the polls showed that the confidence to the armed forces was minor, and now these are record-breaking figures, and our armed forces are creating the history. So my question is this. Such institutions as the Ukrainian Catholic University, how they can help to reform such institutions as the public authorities and those institutions that are the skeleton of our statehood. How practically could we help to reform them? How to make the face of the authorities more civilized by impacting the people working those institutions? Let me remind the first question to Mr. Miroslav and Katya, whether all the businesses should become social businesses and get involved in social projects. So this is the question to the two of you. What is the role of the business? Yeah. Okay. For me personally, the role of the business is first and foremost that the entrepreneurs are depriving the Ukrainian society of paternalistic habits, because an entrepreneur is responsible for his own status in the society, his fate, and they feel natural there, and it becomes attractive to others. People look at them and respectively got motivated to do the same. It turns out that it's possible. You don't have to wait for the happiness to be handed to you. You can deliver yourself. The goal of post-Soviet Ukraine, such change and transformation becomes paramountly important. So no paternalism. Okay, Katya? The question was about the entrepreneurs, and I would differentiate business circles and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are those who risk and that are fastly delivering on what is happening. All the advantages they are delivered by the entrepreneurs. We carried out a number of focus groups about volunteers, about charity activities, and most of those volunteers are entrepreneurs. Placed second are people who work in large business, who have the resources and time to help others. All the other categories are fewer than the first two. I would not want to make any conclusions and extrapolate it on the whole Ukraine, but let me illustrate with a simple fact. Those who risk, those who take the responsibility, they are the ones who make the changes happen. So those who want to become an entrepreneur, please do, and then we'll respond to the second question about the institutions. But if only we would free up those institutions, would those people transform into entrepreneurs? I don't know. Well, the second question will be addressed to Ms. Rome on how our universities should scale up and extend our experience to other higher learning institutions. And since you're here and you represent this university, well, somehow I have a feeling that I have to respond to the questions to which I don't know the answer to. And in principle, people know less than they think they know, and we need to be tolerant to ambiguity in the time when things are changing so fast. Is it possible to extrapolate such experience? Truth be told, I don't know. I believe that becomes the result of a number of circumstances that met in the same place, in the same time, some Galician region habits and the Catholic upbringing and some Lviv environment. I don't know how can you extrapolate that spirit to others. Well, probably that question should be asked to the rector, but, you know, like Mr. Yaroslav said, Crimean Tatar University in Sevastopol and in Odessa, they have their own unique cultural tradition in place. So probably the Ukrainian Catholic University stems from our own tradition, that before us there were people who built those institutions, and we are the ones who learn from the walls of that tradition. Like the Third Church, the memory of such institutions that existed in the past, and people who know about this tradition, they need to be involved. But again, like I said, I'm responding to the question that I know nothing about. I believe you responded beautifully. And the third question was about the civilized face of the public institutions, the question to Mr. Gritsyak and Kat. Well, actually, Yaroslav allowed me to speak first because you need to listen to a smart and decent person. My personal gods are the armed forces of Ukraine, like for all of us, but the institution doesn't work, because if it will be functioning, we would not be collecting donations for the to buy cars, and the female servicewomen would not be wearing men's underwear, and we would not have to donate water, foodstuff, gas canisters, and everything that has been brought in great quantities to the front line. So this institution doesn't work. I am not a great logistics expert, and I cannot estimate whether it's not functioning for 50, 30, 10%, but those who provide donations on a daily basis, probably they will be able to respond to this, and those military administrations in the villages at the front lines, well, probably they're doing something, and I suspect something good. If you read the Ukrainian Truth newspaper, but it's not that visible in the field. So the work of the institutions should deliver the results where the focal point is. That's where the greatest results should be generated. Probably, I suspect there might be some book crossing there in the administrations, probably some decent people, and I suspect their English is more fluent, but what show me the results. People live in hardships still, and everything that deals with the military that we are praying for, these are the results of individuals rather than institutions. Mr. Yaroslav, I feel as if I'm going crazy because I feel that I know the answers to all of the questions. Yeah, for a long time probably now. Yeah, I probably went crazy long ago, but now I recognize this. Well, I'm not saying anything novel and new, but I translate the other people's ideas. I read a lot, and I can present myself as a smart person. Brukhovetsky used to say, and the quote is, things will be great in Ukraine when the alumni of the Kiev-Mogileva Academy would be elected the president. So I believe that the educational reform would be a success when the new Minister of Education would be the alumni of the Ukrainian Catholic University. So why I'm talking about the Ukrainian Catholic University in Odessa? Because the biggest university in Odessa belongs to Kivalov. And I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's Kivalov's university that generates most of the lawyers, and for a while we will have the alumni of the Kivalov Law School. Well, one person likes this for some reason, applauds, but why I'm saying this? It's important that we need to support the Catholic University because this university launched the legal school curriculum, and we will start generating new lawyers and have the decent people, but we need to grow them up. Look, a great formula. The West is one thing and Ukraine is a different thing. Yeah, we are very much different, but again, how can you claim that we should deliver Western reforms? It's like growing bananas in Siberia or penguins in Sahara Desert. It's impossible because you can grow bananas in Siberia if you build hothouses, greenhouses. You can also have penguins in Sahara Desert, but only in the zoos. But you need to have the right farmers who know how to deliver this, who elect new political authorities through reforms. That's why it's great that you are the alumni of the Ukrainian Catholic University. That means that you don't have to be cancelled.
So, I mean, nobody's going to cancel those institutions which are under control of the graduates of the Kiev-Mogileva University or the Ukrainian Catholic University. We'll have time for 2 more questions. So why don't you raise your hand? Yaroslav Rushchishin and Irma Vitovska as our moderators. I have a question to Yaroslav Hrytsak about the war. And I believe that Ukraine has not only to gain victory in this war by liberating its territories, but to have a victory over its future. Because I tend to read those textbooks on history which are being used, and we have to gain this victory, and we have to fight everywhere to organize round tables in order to correct the past, the Ukrainian past, which is well spread among the eastern sort of Europe. So I believe that our future is your vision on Ukraine having a constant platform with representatives of the opposition minorities in Russia. Well, thank you. Now let's have a second question as well. Second question. I have a question to Yaroslav. Taras Butichny, that's my name. You were talking about the youth in politics. A lot of youth came to politics during the last elections. A lot of people were saying that we want to change. They had sparks in their eyes, but there's two statements. The business approach does not work in modern, or at least Ukrainian politics. And a lot of them were crushed, so to say. And now there's this fear. And, okay, during the next elections, why should I go for politics without being afraid that I'll be a political dead man? Because those studying in Ukrainian Catholic University or Kiev Mohyla School, well, maybe there will be politicians in the next generation. But what about the youth that is considering becoming a politics and facing this chance of being harmed by the existing politicians? So here we have two questions to Yaroslav Hrycak, and I would like to ask the rest of the panelists to start thinking on their own key statement as to finalize our panel. So Yaroslav, I gave you this chance to, to think a bit. Thank you. I will never forget about it. Thank you. So I followed this example. There's this Ukrainian history, which is very good, and I think it's even the best, and well, much better than the Russians. Now, that would never happen if in diaspora in North America, they've created several institutions in Harvard, in Alberta, and some others, because they've done the work that allowed us to clear the path so that we would not be having a defeat anytime. So I believe that we have to do that. I know that there's a country in Kyrgyzstan. The Kyrgyzstan, they're watching at us just as we were watching at Poland. And there's this key group that is still lacking its history, Crimean Tatars. And still, the Crimean Tatars, they don't have their own history. There are several history textbooks wrote by someone, but not by those of the Crimean Tatars. They have to have their own school, better in Harvard. If not in Harvard, then in Ukrainian Catholic University. So I'd like to call upon the young Crimean Tatar people. Where are your historians? Why are not enrolled in this department? Because if you're not writing your history, someone will write this. It's very important to do that. And besides, we have the experts in Ukraine. This is the best achievement, because over the 30 years, we've got already the experts that we were developing back in 30 years ago. So the answer to your question is very simple. Fear is a normal feeling. It's a positive feeling. And in fact, we do a lot of things out of fear, and the fact that we are fighting is that we are fearing of a defeat, and everyone has this fear. But it's not about this final terminal reaction. It has to be a primary reaction, because in the very end, if you're afraid, well, then you shouldn't be, leaving this country, or you can live in the West, but that's not going to be an exciting life. I had a graduate from Switzerland, and she kept saying that, well, it's so so unexciting to live in Switzerland. But she continues living in Switzerland, so she has this unexciting life. And there's this observation that I have out of my experience of a professor, because I've been teaching for 30 years and I have a lot of students. There is a very clear division. Those who want an unexciting life, he leaves or he stays somewhere. But then there is one person out of 100,000 who becomes successful. Now, in Ukraine, you can be not one out of 10,000 or 100,000, but one of 10. Now there's this window of opportunity for many people with an experience. And I believe that it's good that there's this group of people who went to politics, and there's this fuck-up session that I kept saying but there's this number of reformers who went for politics, who maybe failed, but now they have the experience, and now they can turn this experience into a positive one. And then maybe there could be a second rapprochement to the politics. The team that started during the first Poroshenko, I think that's the real team already. Maybe they can establish a shadow government. Well, so maybe you have to start anew, start for the third time, for the fourth time. There has to be this very clear principle, and I believe it's normal to be afraid. It's normal to have this feeling of fear. Okay, so now I'd like to pass the floor to this final statements by our panelists. So, anything you would offer as a summary, Katya? My social networks are full with army, face, and language. So my personal statements is all about the university, the hospital, and the museum. So just as it was during the time of peace. I think it's very important. Oh, hospital, you mean positively? Yes. I kept forgetting that a very experienced person is sitting close to me who could give me my own diagnosis. No, I won't give you your diagnosis. So my husband says that everything that we earn, it's good, and we have to invest either in hospitals or in universities or in the museums. Should we interpret that for the current days? We have the best university, Ukrainian Catholic University, so you can donate the money for that or in support of that. And Sophia will tell how. Now, the hospital or the clinic, you need to think of that. And despite we have the owners of the Dobrobit Hospital, you need to think of what to do that. In museum, then there's this world of Skovoroda, and we can do many things, not only with money, but with impressions. So there's this clinic, hospital, or this museum. I kept thinking what I would like to add, what I have not mentioned yet. And I kept thinking of the recipes, why are we having these failures? And because the key myth for Ukraine, it's based on Varyaks. They were the one who came, and we were there, but then came, and they've done everything. Maybe we don't have the experience of a successful country, successful state. That means that we don't believe in a country and in the authority. The person who mentioned about those politicians who were harmed. Now, what does that mean to go and join these authorities? That means that you're becoming a traitor, because the authorities are aliens, so to say. They came in and do something. And whenever we go for power, we're becoming traitors. We're not so poor people. We are becoming those worst sort of category of people. And I think that we have a unique opportunity now that we can defeat these ideas of a heroic defeat, because we can finally win. That's the first aspect. Second, we can develop a new tradition. We can have the authority in our hands, and this is our major objective for the society. We need to hold it, to grasp this authority, and to control that, to become an ordinary Western nation. So out of this unique Ukrainian nation, we need to become a standard, traditional, maybe a bit unexciting Western nation. Okay? Miroslav, please, your concluding remarks. I'd like to recall the words that I've earlier stated in these interviews, but my status as the former political prisoner, it gives me a moral right to repeat those words. what you can see today, what we can see together, many generation of fighters before us would like to see. And we can see that Ukraine is becoming liberated of all those foreign limitations and foreign restrictions, and we can see the end of the history of Russian Empire. I don't know how long that process would take, but I've came up with this statement that Ukraine is shedding blood, but Russian Empire is reaching the final moments of its life. And that gives me some optimism, despite hearing every day this information about casualties, about tragedies, about pain. And I'm convinced that all of us have to find our own optimism in that. And I would like to conclude by yet another quote by the Metropolitan Drisky. The key in transformation of Ukraine is inside of Ukraine. It's hard to change foreign circumstances, but we can change ourselves. And this is something that I would like to wish. So let us give a round of applause to thank Yaroslav Gritsuk, Katarina Zahori, Roman Ketcher, and Miroslav Marinovich. So this is our university, and to Sofia as well. So this is our university because it's all about people that we have in our university, and you had a piece of this true feeling of our university.
Сьогодні Україна і весь світ чекає на вас.
Today, Ukraine and the whole world is waiting for you. Ukrainians are changing the world today. These flags will go to the front lines, to students, teachers, and graduates of the Ukrainian Catholic University. Yevhen Lenyuk taught me the history of great ideas. He is such a good and interesting person, and now he is there. He protects us. 18 students, 13 teachers, employees, and about 50 graduates of the Ukrainian Catholic University defend Ukraine with weapons in their hands. Study and share your acquired knowledge for the benefit of the independent Ukrainian state. And we shall win this battle. Ukraine was independent, it is independent, and it will be independent. Ten members of our community gave their lives so that we can live under the Ukrainian sky today. Heroes are like seeds for us, just as are martyrs for the church. From these seeds, new generations are born. On the one hand, it hurts me a lot. It hurts me in a human way. I feel emptiness. And on the other hand, we know that it is a birth to eternity. Scholarship funds named after Artemy Demid and Oleg Vorobyov, graduates, and the students of the university were established at UCU to commemorate them. I think he is glad in heaven that he studied here. I think he is glad that there is a scholarship named after him. A scholarship is an opportunity for a teenager, despite his lack of money, to gain a very high-quality education. And not only education, but probably the opportunity to change his life. Since the beginning of the war, the Ministry of Education and Science sent educational institutions on vacation. The UCU did not go on vacation.
Тому що ми свято переконані в те, що в час війни не може бути жодних канікул. Ми оголосили.
We are firmly convinced that there should be no holidays during the war. We've announced that since last week, when the full-scale hostilities began. We are not stopping the educational process. We are transforming it into very practical things. The university took a proactive position. A logistics volunteer center has opened on the campus.
We wanted to create an opportunity here for all the refugees and students locally to serve soldiers and people who got damaged because of the war.
Wow, see, this is wonderful. I see the people of Ukraine welcoming the refugees. I see the people of Ukraine giving them room in their homes, like you do here at the Catholic University of Ukraine. And I see the people of Ukraine who say this evil will not have the last word. Light, not darkness, life, not death. And so I am encouraged, not depressed, here in Ukraine.
The UCU volunteers delivered more than 30 tons of humanitarian aid to the place where it was most needed. It is actually possible to send something by the new mail, but this is not the main thing. When you arrive, when you have thanked them personally and have shaken hands with them, when you have brought them something important and they emotionally express their gratitude, then you feel the unity and strength. Volunteers make heat accumulators. They weave camouflage nets and bomb shelters. The university community collects funds for motor vehicles for military and medical units. Student volunteers of the Save Art UA project are recording the loss of items of cultural value for Ukraine, as well as looking for resources for their restoration. A team of media professionals launched the Post to Stop War in Ukraine platform, where publications about the war in Ukraine are posted aimed at foreigners. Students and teachers of the Faculty of Applied Sciences participate in cybersecurity activities. A particularly important area of volunteer work at the UCU is to provide military and civilian personnel with medicines and medical equipment. With these devices, we shall additionally equip a mobile hospital that will be able to receive the wounded at a distance of 60 to 80 kilometers from the front line. Historians, cultural experts, lawyers, and journalists are creating a database of testimonies of people who survived the horrors of war. In the Little Histories of the Great War Project, they recorded and processed about 150 testimonies. Since the beginning of the war, UCU provided shelter for 23 public and volunteer organizations. In the building of the Philosophical and Theological Faculty, students and employees of the Social Work program organized a shelter for those who lost their homes.
До нас багато приїжджають людей зі східних областей.
Many people come to us from the eastern regions, from Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Quite often there are stories of people who sat in basements and shelters for many days.
Тому що це дуже болючий досвід, але це вирішальний час для України.
This is a very painful experience. But this is the decisive time for Ukraine, and I'm simply happy when I see that students influence people's destinies with their work and knowledge. Students of the Social Work program help military personnel undergo rehabilitation. They often come here, they lie and think, it's the end of the road, it's already the end of my life, I shall not be able to do anything. And I have to give him the hope that he will be able to both chop wood and somehow work. UKU student Aristia Masna has gone on her path from volunteer work at the university to service in the hospitalist battalion, where she saves lives of soldiers directly on the battlefield. What should Ukraine be like after the victory? UKU, together with National University Kyiv Mohila Academy, launched an academic platform to discuss the vision of the future of Ukraine.
Кожна війна є великою трагедією.
Every war is a great tragedy, but at the same time, it is a great opportunity. The opportunity for Ukraine now is that Ukraine can become a new Eastern European tiger that will determine the politics in Eastern Europe, and the world. Actually, this is the main topic. We have to talk about victory, think about victory, and strategize about victory. We can't manage without a strategy. That's what we need most right now. In September, the university returned to teaching in classrooms. Despite the war, UKU once again opens its doors to gifted young people from all over Ukraine. The competitive score average of submitted applications for bachelor's programs remains the highest in Ukraine. The number of entrants who receive scholarships almost doubled compared to last year. Also, the number of students from outside Halachina increased.
Після 2 років пандемії
After 2 years of the pandemic, after the terrible first months of martial law, we need to be together within the beautiful walls of our Ukrainian Catholic University, together in the classrooms, together in our offices. Together we must go to victory. We must be those witnesses who will give others the strength of the energy of faith. Faith in victory, faith in God, faith in the other person. Together we shall overcome everything.